Counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, you're on.
Good evening. I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place Council for Monday, September the 19th, 2022 to order. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, so would the city clerk do a roll call for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, present.
Mayor Worthington is excused.
Councilmember Belisi, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance for us, please?
Okay. Can we please all rise?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended, to amend as follows. Item 6G under the consent agenda should read as follows. Adopt a resolution acknowledging the City of University Place's approval of the proposed amendments to the Pierce County countywide planning policies for consistency with Vision 2050 and the Growth Management Act as recommended by the Pierce County Regional Council and approved by the Pierce County Council, and authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Pierce County and its cities and towns, thereby ratifying the countywide planning policies amendments.
This is Councilmember Keel. I second.
Are there any objections to the amended motion by the council members? Hearing none, I approve the approval of the agenda as amended. It has passed. Thank you. Public comments, and with that, we are now in the public comment portion of the agenda. This is the opportunity for members of the public to provide comments to the City Council for any items not appearing on the agenda or on the consent agenda. If you intend to provide comments for the items scheduled under council consideration that will be addressed later in the meeting, the same instructions will ultimately apply. The instructions on how to participate are shown on the screen. Thank you, City Clerk. Now, is there any members of the public present that would like to make public comment? Okay, well, let me make a little small correction. There are two that signed in. So with that, I'm going to start with Costa Bezel. Hopefully I pronounced that right. You're welcome to correct me.
0 for 2.
Okay. Costa
Basil.
Costa Basil.
Yes, sir.
Give your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name's Costa Basil. I live at 9304 31st Street West. Been there for 28 years. I just received a letter 2 weeks ago from the city, certified letter in regards to traffic site issue at Soundview Drive and 31st Street, and a row of arborvitaes adjacent to my property, which inhibits a safe view. The arborvitaes are indeed in the city's right-of-way on the north side of the property. They were there before I bought the house, but that's besides the point. They are there, and the city is requesting that I remove or relocate those arborvitae. Relocating is kind of a funny thing, but it sounds like with my meetings I had on site with Chris Johnson and Todd Smith, this letter is from Jordan Martin. The city is going to go ahead and remove those to help with the site in that intersection. The reason there was a first incident in my 28 years of being there is because cars like to come down 31st Street and cut that corner. That being said, I believe there was a lady that was driving and she veered off to the right. I don't know why she wasn't at a stopped intersection, but she got damage to her car, and she made a phone call, and my guess is there's people in City Hall that know what happened. And so myself and my neighbor are going to take on a large expense providing privacy that we have now that's going to go away once these trees are cut down. There are more than our little intersection throughout my neighborhood that have trees and shrubs in the right-of-way. The city's right-of-way, they're the city's trees, just like these arborvitaes. They don't belong to Costa and Donna Basil. They belong to you. They're in your right-of-way. They've been there for 28 years. Take them away tomorrow. I've already told the guys that. I'm not blind to the issue that they're in the right-of-way. What I would like to hear is that the city is going to look at all of these intersections between my house and Trader Joe. I went there today. There's got to be 12 or 15 intersections. When the three of us were standing in the middle of the road and the neighbor came down, there was 5 of us. We were there for 30 minutes, rolling out 280 feet down the hill, 280 feet up the hill, squatting down. I don't know if anybody got any complaints about some crazy man measuring 14 and a half feet with a piece of chalk and squatting down in numerous intersections throughout the city. But I understand how the sight lines are derived, and that was a good bit of information and education that I have. I would like the city to look at more intersections. Take my trees. I'm not arguing that point. There are many more intersections throughout these neighborhoods. We all live in homes. We all live in the city. I want it safe so when I drive 3 blocks up the road to my grandkid that I feel safer. And I thank you for your time, and I hope it goes beyond my 3 minutes. So
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
The next on the sign-up sheet is Mr. Howard Lee. Mr. Lee, please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Howard Lee. I live at 8302 41st Street West. I'm the treasurer of the University Place Veterans Plaza nonprofit, and I'm here on behalf of them to give you an update on the Veterans Plaza Memorial. And it is approximately 95% complete, with the only major work to be accomplished is the placement of the granite pylons. They are currently in the Premier Monuments Workshop being prepared for installation. Design of the plaza anticipated the late arrival of the pylons, so they only have to be dropped in place. The plaza will be dedicated in an official ceremony at UP Cirque Park on Veterans Day, November 11th, and all of the community is invited to celebrate this wonderful occasion and remember the sacrifices our veterans made and have made for our country. Completing the plaza has always been a collaboration between private and public sector. Ken Trebelhorn, our nonprofit secretary and project manager, is a retired architect who designed the Veterans Plaza, then carefully coordinated all the volunteer, private contractor, and vendor efforts so there were very few interruptions in the work schedule. Ken replaced his project manager hard hat with a worker ball cap when he and Karen Schwartz spent 3 8-hour days fine-tuning the placement of the pavers, which required using a mason saw to cut and fill in the many small gaps. The City of University Place has provided administrative, general services, and financial support throughout the entire Veterans Plaza project, without which we would not have made the progress we have today. Noteworthy of worth is the performance of the city engineer, Jack Eklund, and his University Place Park supervisor, Tony West, and his crew, who provided the boots on the ground, or in this case, the shovels in the dirt. Finally, the City of University Place graciously donated a total of $65,000 to the construction of the Veterans Plaza. This is no small amount of money, but in return, the taxpayers received a park asset which is valued at over $200,000, representing an approximate 30% return on their investment. The City Council have truly safeguarded the taxpayers' dollars by both improving the overall value and enjoyability of their Cirque Park. Between Veterans Plaza, the budgeted upgrade to the playground, and the proposed inclusive playground, UP Cirque Park will certainly be the crown jewel of our city's park system. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person on the list is Bob Jean. Would you please come up?
Public hearing, Mr. Mayor?
No.
No, I have no comment on this.
Thank you. Okay, so we're, City Clerk, is there anyone on the remotely joining us that would like to speak?
I don't see anyone on the online, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. With that, the public comments is adjourned. The next item on the agenda is consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Councilmember Belisi, I make a motion to approve the amended agenda as proposed.
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Is there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. The next is the public hearing, and the public hearing is for support for the public safety levy lid lift. And with that, we have a staff report. Mr. Kaser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Matt Kaser, City Attorney. As the council may recall, several weeks ago, it passed a resolution sending to the voters in November a proposed levy lid lift measure. Council is also aware that there are certain prohibitions under state law that limit the council's ability to have an influence on ballot measures. The general rule under state law is that public funds may not be used to support or oppose ballot measures. There are several exceptions that are set forth in the statute. One of those is the subject of tonight's public hearing. Under state law, legislative bodies such as the City Council can express collective opinions on ballot measures, provided that two requirements are met. The first is that the required notice of the meeting includes the title and number of the ballot proposition, and two, that members of the body afford members of the public an approximately equal opportunity for an expression of an opposing view. Those statutory prerequisites have been met. A couple caveats before I conclude my remarks. Should council elect to pass this resolution that's in front of it tonight, which would support an opinion supporting the ballot measure, that goes only so far as to say that the council has a legislative body supports the measure. It does not say that the city supports the measure. That ultimately comes with the ballot, with the voters expressing their collective opinion in November, as to the city expressing an opinion or not an opinion, depending on how the ballot measure goes. The second thing that I think is also important to know, that does not extend to an encouragement. The city has the opportunity to send out publications and mailers in the ordinary course, setting forth an objective statement of the measure. That does not extend to the city and those publications saying, yes, vote yes on this measure or vote no on this measure. Simply, it is an expression of the collective opinion of the council expressing an opinion. So with those caveats and that background, I happily yield the matter back to the council and ready to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kaser. Is there any clarification points that any council member may have? I see none. So with that, moving on to public comment and, excuse me?
It's a public hearing, right?
It is a public hearing.
Oh, I have it as public comment here. Okay, excuse me. Thank you.
It is comment time.
Pardon?
It is public comment time.
So, Mr. Kaser, is a public hearing for this?
It is a public hearing. However, the rules that the council would typically apply to public comment apply the same 3-minute rule and obligations and the same
Okay,
rules requirements that
okay,
are now
thank you.
present on screen.
So, public comment on this public hearing, just to be correct. I got it. So, is there any members of the public here present that would have any public comments? Mr. Jean? Please state your name and address.
Thank you, Mr.
And you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I see some familiar faces and some new ones. It was my pleasure to serve this city for 15, oh, is my mic on?
Name and address.
Am I good?
Yes, but name and address, please.
It's Bob Jean, and I live on University Place West, or in this,
Your address.
yeah, 9716 Island View
Thank
Lane West. Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I'm here in support of this measure, very much in support of this measure. I thank the council for letting the voters have a chance to decide on the police services. I did make my comments in writing, so I can hopefully stick to your 3 minutes. I have been known to go over, so hopefully I can keep it brief. I did want to place my comments in a little bit of context for those that are new to our community in the last 28 years. When the city council, some present, originally incorporated the city, you made 4 promises that I think the city has worked really hard to keep. One, that we could do more with less, meaning that we could significantly improve local government services and do it at or below the county's unincorporated rate. And this council has worked consistent with that and with other councils, with the exception of police, and I'll speak to that in a minute. The second promise was that total taxes could be controlled, and you and prior councils have also done that and kept that promise. And we've done it less than the county's streets, police, property tax, and will still be lower than that with this levy approval. The third area was growth management and economic development, town center being a part of that, and the idea that we could protect existing neighborhoods and still meet our share of the state mandated growth, concentrating new growth along the mixed use areas rather than scattering throughout town. That was more the county's plan. This also broadens the city's tax base and lessens the burden on individual homeowners. And then the fourth promise was that we can make capital improvements. The forecast at incorporation was that we could do about $1 million a year. So year to date, that would be about $27 million. The city's done over $200 million worth of capital improvements, leveraging grants and match. But unfortunately, that can't be used to fund the police. So speaking to the thoughts on the police measure, community policing was one of the main reasons for incorporating the city of University Place. And at that time, I won't go into the mechanics, but we only really had 1 deputy on patrol at that time. Now, and shortly after incorporation, we were up to a minimum of 3, sometimes 4 or 5. You could do community policing with that level of service. Right now, your deputies, our deputies, they're pretty much limited to chase calling. They don't have time to be proactive as we would all like them. If this levy is approved, that'll take us back up to the 3 levels of officers on duty that we had. That's a 1/3 increase. It doesn't sound like a lot, but what it does is it will allow for proactive community policing. And that's the reason I've been concerned for some time that we've been running too low. And so I'm very pleased as a citizen and longtime supporter of the city for this measure. This will reduce response times.
Mr.
It will
Jean, if you
increase.
can wrap it up in the next 10 seconds.
If I could have 30 seconds, I will. Is that okay? Thank you, Sir. The patrol, response times, visibility, and community policing. One of the issues I did want to speak to, and I'll be brief on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We often get asked, and I've been asked it, and the city's been asked it, well, why are the total taxes in University Place higher than in other communities? And we have a great school district, but we pay the property tax for that. I don't have kids, but I totally support the school district. We have a consolidated fire district, which I think was a very good move, a consolidation. But the city of University Place only gets 4% of the total property tax. That's less than $300 a year on an average homeowner. And the $20 a month increase that this levy would result would be a great investment and certainly is not going to tip the scales of putting the city's total taxes out of comparison with any other community in the area. So with that, I will wrap up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for a couple minutes or a couple moments. I strongly support the measure. I thank the council for putting it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jean. Is there anyone else that I don't have listed here that would like to come up and speak? I don't see any. And City Clerk, is there anybody remotely joining us for a comment?
I don't see any, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, we close the public hearing section of this particular meeting. And so with that, we move on to council consideration. And I'm asking for a motion for an adoption of a resolution for support for the public safety levy lift.
This is Councilmember Belisi. I make a motion to approve passage of an ordinance amending chapter, oh, wait a minute, wrong one. To adopt a resolution expressing support for the city's proposition number 1, levy lid lift for support of law enforcement.
It's Councilmember Keel. I second.
You're not going to say the whole thing? No.
My part was much easier.
We have a first and a second. Council discussion. Any comments, discussion? Let's see here.
I have a mic here. I can use this one. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I fully intend to support, vote for this proposal before us. We've studied this a long time. We've talked about it. I want to thank staff for putting together the proposal and the numbers. I want to thank the citizens who've worked on it as well to put all this before us. I've lived in this community over 30 years, since '87. I can't do that math real quick. I've seen it when we weren't a city, and I know what it was when we had the county patrolling, and it was not good, in my opinion. In incorporation and when we had, a great police force, it was very good. And now I've seen it go the other way. So I as an individual person that lives in this city for as long as I have, I personally support this, and I'm happy to add my support to this measure as a council member. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's okay, I have a secret mic down here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And before I say my remarks, I just want to say it's great to have former Councilmember Lee back in the chamber with us, and our former city manager and our first city manager, Bob Jean. So thank you both for being here tonight. I could not say it any better than what Mr. Jean said with regards to the need to increase our police services. As many of the constituents in our community know, I'm not a person who's an advocate for taxes. But in this particular case, where we have, as a city, as a community, have really seen a rapid change and growth in our community, when you look at where we have been in terms of police services and where we are today, I know the concern that many folks have is what's the impact on my home, what's the impact on my pocketbook. But this is one of those few taxes that truly makes sense when we're looking at how do we move forward in the 21st century and in this decade, making our community a safer place. To the comments of Councilmember Keel, I don't think I've ever seen an initiative where there's been so much engagement by community members, by community organizations, by the city staff, and really putting together and to our police chief, really, who took a very hard look at what is really needed to put our city in a safe place. Not that it's not at the present time, but to keep it the way it is and to make it better. So I too have no reservations in moving this initiative forward and supporting it, and I'm certainly hoping everyone else will do the same. But again, thanks for the comments, and Mr. Jean, thank you so much for your remarks tonight. Truly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to say that this was, when I was out campaigning a year ago, obviously I'm the new guy in the council, I talked with hundreds, actually well over 1,000 of our fellow citizens, and this was the number one concern was public safety and policing. And I am just very happy to have the opportunity to give this discussion to the voters, because this is something that I heard a lot about, that people were concerned, and this is an opportunity to fix. And I am very much in favor of the resolution. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Well, all my comments have been succinctly and wholeheartedly expressed by my fellow council members, as well as former city manager, Mr. Jean. You can tell this is important when Mr. Jean comes to our city council and gives a report. So thank you for taking time out of your day in order to brief us on the history, and as well as the urgency that this, hopefully this, if this measure passes, will immensely help our city. We have heard quite a bit from our citizens in regards to increasing public safety and more police presence, traffic control, and so I hope they can understand that with the tremendous growth that the city has had and will have in the future, that they will look hard at this measure and hopefully vote for it. Thank you.
Councilmember Felici.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I also want to put my 100% support into this levy. It is something that we on the council have struggled with since I was appointed in 2010, how we were going to add back and increase our police force. And try as we might over the last 10 years, despite what you see in road improvements, our general fund and our property tax monies did not increase to the point that we could allocate our general fund money to increase our police force. 100% of the property taxes that are paid directly to the city of University Place are allocated to our police department. And based on statutory limitations, we are only allowed to increase those property taxes 1% every year. That amounts to an average of about $40,000 a year. That does not even account for a third of a police officer. So without 1% growth, there is no way that we can really add police officers that are needed to be out there and to be visible to the community and to be the deterrent that we had prior to 2009 when we first contracted our services with Pierce County. At that time, our property crimes went down significantly. We had police officers that were able to do what was needed to be proactive in the community, to be visible to those that came in looking to do ill deeds and to encounter a police officer. We have seen what has happened when we reduced our police force by a third in 2009 due to budgetary cuts. Our crime rate has slowly increased in nuisance crimes that all of us hate, the car prowls, the property thefts out of businesses. All of this costs us time, money, and energy, and eventually leads to feeling unsafe. So I am looking forward to seeing the responses from the citizens, that they back their concerns about the police force with a positive vote so we can move this initiative forward. I will caution the community that even if this levy were to pass, we are not going to get police officers January 1. It will be a struggle, but we will prioritize with Pierce County in making sure that we get our officers on board as soon as possible, as soon as they are able to be trained up and ready to move into University Place. So I look forward to seeing what our citizens have to say and that they back their words with the action of going to the polls in November and voting to approve this levy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. For the final remarks, I believe, unless I see someone else wanting to speak, is that I too will support this measure. But the important part of this I really like that's embedded into this resolution is that it allows our council members as citizens to participate and be involved in getting the public to understand and to vote for this. And I really appreciate our staff to bringing this to us, because as public officials, we're always worried about crossing the line, and this measure here allows us to know as individuals, even with our titles, can participate and go out there and speak on behalf of this levy. And as you heard, we all are on board. I also was fortunate enough with Councilmember McCluskey, just a few days ago. We met with the Pierce County Regional Council. We have the privilege of having literally an hour presentation from our Sheriff Troyer's presentation, and it was awesome. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was scary, let's put it that way, of what he said, but it was really informative. And I'm going to work with Mayor Worthington to see if we can bring Sheriff Troyer to come and give us an awakening of what's really out there and how important it is to engage in this levy. And hopefully it gets passed. So hopefully we'll be able to get him in here before November's vote. With that, I'd like to ask for the final vote, and all in favor of the motion to adoption of a resolution? We're going to roll call. Okay, I've been asked for a roll call. Would the city clerk do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, aye.
Vote result 6-0. Motion passes.
Thank you. So the motion passed, and thank you, everybody, and thank you for the public and staff as well. With that, I'd like to move on to council consideration. There is one item, park rules amendments, and with a staff report, Mr. Jack Eklund. Mr. Eklund.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, Jack Eklund, Director of Engineering, and tonight I'm bringing to you for your consideration a revision to the city's Parks Code, which is found in Title 15 of the City Municipal Code, and it's as it relates to smoking, vaping, and drone usage in city parks. As I'm sure you all recall, in Resolution 907, the City Council requested the Parks Advisory Commission to review the specific issue of whether the University Place Municipal Code should be amended to prohibit or otherwise regulate public smoking, vaping, or the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, more commonly known as drones, in city parks. So starting in November of 2020 and all the way through April of 22, the Park Commission studied and considered this issue over numerous meetings. Part of their consideration include surveying 12 jurisdictions on their policies and practices, reviewing the results of flash vote survey, review of the health department recommendations, as well as conferring with the Public Safety Advisory Commission. In their study, the Park Commission noted the following. Only 3 of 12 jurisdictions that they surveyed actually restrict any drone usage in parks. However, 10 of 12 jurisdictions they looked at do restrict either smoking or vaping in parks. Their flash vote survey showed about a little over 17% of the respondents indicated that smoking was a big problem in our parks, and 12% of them noted that where they believe vaping was a big problem, and then just under 7% talked about indicated drone usage was a big problem in UP parks. It's important to note that the survey itself did not ask the question whether people would like to see restrictions on either of these. It was more of an open-ended type of thing. And then the main, a big issue in their discussion with the Public Safety Advisory Commission was the Public Safety Advisory Commission expressed a concern that enforcement of smoking, vaping, or drone usage in parks could distract the police department from higher priority issues. So after their consideration, the Parks Commission ultimately recommended to not change the existing code, and attached in your council packet, you will find the letter that the Parks Commission provided back in April. As you may recall, during their presentation to council, the commission indicated that the primary factor in their recommendation was the concern for enforcement expectations, either being too high. They didn't want to see like a, a bunch of heavy-handed enforcement. And at the same time, they didn't want to set forth unrealistic enforcement expectations either. So that was their main concern. The other thing the commission noted in their presentation is that they did not believe they were in the position to properly evaluate the health department recommendation on this issue, and deferred that back to city council. So in attached to your council packet to help with this, we have attached the material from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department that promotes and recommends a smoke and vape-free parks program. Under this program, the health department recommends all jurisdictions pass regulations to restrict smoking and vaping in parks, and notes several benefits to creating tobacco-free parks. Of those, they note that 80% of the Pierce County residents are already non-smokers. Smoking and vaping restrictions would create a positive environment for children. It would reduce the opportunities for youth to start using tobacco and vapor products. It prevents negative consequences of secondhand smoke, decrease litter from cigarettes in parks. It provides an opportunity for our park policies to align with surrounding communities in Pierce County. And then it offers community tobacco-free environments at events, as well as promoting tobacco-free environments for youth who use the parks. So also in that, you'll note that the health department promotes on their website that there are currently 11 jurisdictions in the county that have a smoke and vape free or vape free regulations in place. So in kind of looking at both of those two pictures, we got the recommendation from the Parks Commission as well as the health department. So we've looked at the recommendation from Parks Commission, the recommendation and data from Pierce County Health Department, as well as related to our existing city codes. So first of all, kind of summarize what we've seen in smoking and vaping. Basically, in reviewing the information there, we have found that a vast majority of jurisdictions around the county currently restrict smoking and or vaping in their parks, including most of our neighbors, which would be Lakewood, Tacoma, Fircrest, Gig Harbor. They all restrict it. This restriction is becoming the normal operating expectation around the county rather than exception. In each of these jurisdictions, I've reached out to them to find out what is the implication of enforcement, and they say police enforcement is rarely and probably never utilized for this activity, and in most cases signage and polite requests to stop have proven to be sufficient. And although in each of these cases a potential fine could be issued for noncompliance, none of the jurisdictions I've spoken with recall ever having to issue such a citation. Now, the issue of drones is a little different in our parks. Now, although there are much fewer jurisdictions that regulate drone usage in parks, technically University Place already does. Our current municipal code restricts most remotely flown vehicles in our parks, and it states no person shall fly or operate any gas or electric powered aircraft, model rockets, or hot air balloons, except as specified in places and times designated for such activities by the director. So this, by just a literal definition, could be interpreted to include drones. However, for clarity and fairness to other remote aircraft operators, it would be recommended to just add unmanned aerial vehicles, which is the FAA definition for drones, and have that added to the list for clarity. In your council packet, you will find a proposed resolution that would modify Title 15 of the City of University Place Municipal Code to restrict smoking and vaping in city parks, as well as clarify the usage of drones in city parks. And then one other item that's clarifying is we noticed in reviewing this that It could be interpreted that our parks code applies to all parks, whether it's owned by the city, the county, or private parties in the city. And so we are clarifying that the rules and regulations of our city park code really only apply to city-owned and operated parks. So with that, this concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Council, any clarifying questions at this moment? None seen. Moving on to public comment. For those joining us remotely, please look up at the screen. In the meantime, is there anybody here that is present, any of the public present that would like to comment? I see one member of the public. Nope, he's saying no. It's okay. No, I know this individual. He's from Faircrest, and he did a lot towards the swimming pool that I say we because University Place enjoys that, residents enjoys that pool, and so we appreciate you being here. Thank you. That being said, I don't see anyone here coming forward. City Clerk, anybody remotely?
I don't see anyone remotely, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, at this point, the public comment is closed, and we'll go to council consideration. May I have a motion for a passage of an ordinance for park rules amendments?
This is Councilmember Belisi. I make a motion on proposed council action to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 15.05 of the University Place Municipal Code relating to park rules.
Councilmember Keel, a second.
We have a first and a second. Council discussion, comments? I'm going to. Did I do it? Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember
Thank you, Mayor
McCluskey.
Pro Tem. Mr. Eklund, thank you for an excellent recap on everything and aligning the unmanned aerial devices to include the drones, and noted that we do have something similar in our code. So thank you for doing your research on that, and also your research including the health department reports. And I had been working with the health department on this for about a couple years to establish health in all of our policies. And this, they indicated, was one of their top priorities. If University Place could at least put signage up to indicate that there's no smoking. And the schools, all the schools' properties have signage up to that effect. For, I think smoking would cover all smoke, vaping, tobacco. So I'll just use that term smoke to mean that. And if we were to look at our flash vote here, that would be almost 27% of the flash vote indicated that there was some issues with smoke or vaping in the park. I use our parks regularly, and about a third of the time I'm sometimes happenstance, my bad timing to be walking behind somebody who is smoking or vaping, and that's not pleasant when I want to breathe deeply and not inhale secondhand smoke. So I would encourage the City Council to vote in favor of this. It indicates our values and our city's projection into, health and well-being and walkability throughout our city for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Jack. So regarding, say, drones, and you said that there's a prohibition with the exception of a director could make an exception. Who's the director in this case, and how would that process for granting an exception works? And the reason I'm asking the question is, let's say somebody wants to film a movie and have a drone, or somebody wants to have a drone convention in Cirque Park or something. How would that exception process work?
So currently I'm currently would be the director. And so from that standpoint, yeah. And so it would be, right now it's not spelled out. It could be if it's, it could be it depends on the scale of the, what they're doing. If somebody is going to fly a single drone for some certain reason, it could be as easy as an email or a phone call to my office, and as long as we understand what the scope that they're doing and they follow that, it would be some sort of written permission kind of thing that would be did. It wouldn't be in a permit kind of thing. However, if it involved like a larger kind of it could get triggered into a special event permit if it involved 50 or more people. And so it's at this point it'd be fairly informal unless it was for a much larger group.
Councilmember Fleming?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And Jack, thank you for that great summary. I thought it was excellent and I appreciate it. Not only was it a great summary, it's very informative. I think, as a physician and former chair of the Health Department Board, it would be amiss if I didn't make a comment on this particular initiative that's before us. I've heard the arguments in the past that, it's people's individual rights to smoke if they choose or to vape if they choose. But, on the flip side of that argument, we know without a doubt and for a fact that smoking and secondhand smoke and vaping all are contributors to adverse outcomes with regards to personal and public health. So it would be ludicrous to think otherwise if we were not to set the example and be the leaders in our community to say that this is not acceptable, especially when it comes to our families and our children and individuals who want, as Councilmember McCluskey pointed out, to use the park. I think this is a great opportunity for the city to say we should be encouraging and creating those opportunities for citizens to be able to recreate in the community in a smoke-free, vape-free environment. And for that purpose, I think it's a wise decision to move forward with this initiative. With regards to the drones, I don't have an opinion one way or another. I think the proposal that you mentioned where you get those exceptions I think are appropriate, and I think the current city ordinances cover other situations where drones might be flown in the park. So I'm okay with that piece. But with regards to the smoking, vaping, and secondhand smoke, I think this is a good initiative, and we just need to move forward with it. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else to speak on this. With that, I'd like to go for the vote, and would the city clerk do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Keel?
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Wood?
Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Belisi?
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, aye.
Mayor vote result 6-0. Motion passes.
Thank you. We're moving on to city manager and council comments and reports, and we'll start with the city manager. Mr. Sugg, are you online? And there he is.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council.
Just kidding. Go ahead.
Recently, council last month earlier this month, approved the bid awards for several road contracts. These are federally funded, and there's three in particular that are very important to the community. The first is Chambers Creek Road from Bridgeport Way to approximately the Charles Wright Academy entrance. That contract is going to, I've got good news, that's going to start in November, possibly late October. So construction will begin, and so you'll see improvements being made there, and long awaited and highly desired. It's not the only portion of Chambers Creek Road that we're pursuing funding for, but this is the federal funds that we've gotten under this phase, and we're very appreciative of that work. Jack Eklund took the lead in securing the funds, brought it in-house,
to get it designed by our own city engineers. And then, of course, having council award the bid, all important milestones. And now we're on to construction. Secondly, another federally funded project is Lakewood Drive between Hannah Pierce and 64th. We're going to be overlaying that street, and the contractor is going to be starting in October and should be complete by the end of this year. The third federally funded project is Grandview Drive, and that is that's going to be started again this fall, probably October or November. First with ADA ramps. The sidewalk ramps are being reconstructed to meet the latest ADA rules, Americans with Disabilities Act rules. And we're also going to be doing some pavement repair. And then by that time, we've got probably a winter shutdown, come back in the spring and do the pavement grinding and overlay. So that's going to be done probably in 2 stages. That'll depend on weather and working closely with the contractor. But again, 3 projects, 3 bid awards by council, all federally funded. We're looking forward to that. These are important milestones in the city's infrastructure. And then on the fun side of community events, we have another opportunity for the community to come together on October 14th. That's a Friday from 5 to 9 p.m. in Market Square for the return of the Oktoberfest event. A well-loved event in 2019 was its inaugural date. We brought it back post-pandemic, and we're happy to bring that back for the community. Details can be found on the city's website. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, I end my report.
Thank you, Mr. Suck. And with that, I'll start with Councilmember Keel for any council comment.
Great, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a couple things, just for your information, council's awareness. You may recall last year, it's a Sound Transit report. We started the process of hiring a new CEO for Sound Transit. We culminated that in the June of this year timeframe. I'm happy to report that that new CEO, their first day will be on September 27th. And just in the throes now of onboarding the person. They're coming from back east. And so you can imagine, you can appreciate all the different things that have to happen to go on with the onboarding. So I'm heavily involved in making that happen. And then also just doing this knowledge transfer, getting the person up to speed with all the realignment work that's going on, where we're shifting billions of dollars to realign our projects based on the pandemic and the concrete strike and a lot of other things. And so a lot of that work is happening right now. Well, one other thing I want to say, and it deals with Pierce Transit. The mayor just received a request to sign a letter, which I think he did today. We're in the midst of applying for some grants from the State Department of Transportation. Pierce Transit is really looking into zero emission buses, and so we've got a bunch of electric buses now, but we're beginning to really double down on zero emissions. And so there's a lot of work now happening within that agency to get us to that goal where we actually have a complete fleet of electric buses. So that's it.
Thank you. And I don't see anybody on my list here. Anybody else that you want to push your?
Yes, I have a comment.
Okay. Councilmember Wood, I should go down my list. Excuse me. Yes. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're limited to 5 seconds. No.
And done. No. I just wanted to draw attention to an email, actually, I think every member of the council just got today, from Comcast. And it's talking about Comcast RISE grants for small businesses that are owned by women and people of color, including Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, and Asian American owners, among others. They plan to issue out $1 million in grants between King and Pierce counties, which is $110,000 grants. The application period is October 3rd through October 16th with award in November. I'd encourage any small businesses and every small business in UP that is eligible to apply. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. And next is our Councilmember McCluskey.
All right, just give me this. All right, thank you. Well, as Mayor Pro Tem alluded to prior in the meeting, we were both at the Pierce County Regional Council meeting on September 15th, and he gave you a brief report of the sheriff's report from Mr. Troyer, and I would encourage us that we have Mr. Troyer come before the dais and give the same report, and we can ask him questions as well, because it was quite eye-opening, and also the partnerships and the liaisons that he's trying to establish and to create to counter some of these shortfall in staffing and recruitment. We also had a presentation by Laurel Hodgson. She's a senior planner for the Washington Commerce in regards to the Growth Management Act. She gave a presentation on the current laws of House Bill 2021 that was passed last year and how that was going to be implemented. So they're designing the strategy now, and so they're identifying different local policies and regulations that for displacement, racially disparate impacts, and they're trying to condense it all succinctly in about 5 steps so the cities can follow it and address it into their plans. And with that, I'm going to allow Mayor Pro Tem to finish off the rest of the meeting because Mayor Pro Tem has been proactively engaged and met several times with Deputy Mayor Whitting. And so there was a very robust conversation in regards to the TCC project recommendations. And so I will allow him to report on that. Because I have another board that I attended, and I would like to give a report out, the Zoo Trek Authority Board that meets quarterly met on September 14th. And this is in regards to their $56 million operating expenses that it takes to operate both zoo and trek. So it's quite a big chunk of money to operate those two wonderful assets that we have in our county. At the zoo, they talked about the new Arctic fox exhibit that's ready to go. The Arctic fox unfortunately got bit by a bee and has a nose infection, so it will be okay, but it doesn't want to come out in public quite yet, but it will. They're also redesigning and replanning their polar bear exhibit, and hopefully they will get a couple polar bears around the spring of 2023 if all goes well. The youth volunteer program and all the summer camp activities were a big hit. They were extremely popular and almost to pre-pandemic numbers in attendance. The South Pacific Aquarium Project is they've repaired, resealed, and went in and upgraded all their plumbing and ventilation and filtration systems in there. So that should open up, if everything goes on schedule, in 2023 for a early fall reopening of that exhibit. It will have a more interactive displays and engagement with the exhibits. And one of them in particular, the jellyfish, was quite interesting. So that's going to be presented quite differently than it has done in the past. And it's also noted that the jellyfish they internally at the zoo propagate their jellyfish for their exhibits. So they're as trying to be as sustainable. And this is the current trend of all zoos, that they propagate within instead of going in and taking from the wild and bringing it into the zoo enclosures. And they partner with other national zoos accordingly. So there, I'm sure there's not any inbreeding that goes along with that. At the track, the Northwest track, they have 3 trams on site. They're new electric super duper trams from Portugal. That's really cool. They'll have a full sunroof from the front of the tram all the way to the back of the tram. They'll have extra large windows and ventilation systems. And they're going to be trained by Portugal's engineering team in the next few months. There's 3 new moose orphans that were taken in by the trek, and they're doing really well. An update on the northern leopard frogs that were endangered, and repopulating the environment was a big hit. They were working in conjunction with Oregon, and it was noted that the frogs from the trek was far fatter than those from Oregon. So I guess they fed them well, and they're ready, they're plump, and are ready to go out in the wild. So they were quite proud of their plumpness. And with that, the zoo is passing with flying colors their accreditation, and now the trek next year will be going through the same accreditation review committee. And with that, I'll conclude all of my reports, and thank you.
Councilmember Fleming, if you push your speak button, if you'd like to speak, I'll let you in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I don't know how you even do a follow-on for that zoo report. So that's a tough one to do. But for tonight, for once only, I have nothing to report. So I'll just move this right along. Thank you.
And Councilmember Bellisi, you have a mic, ma'am?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor. This summer, we had the honor of having music on the square, and our major sponsor was UP Refuse. It was highly attended. There are many of us in the community that are still aching to have music in our lives. And I just wanted to inform the public there is a local business that is having a concert that has concerts periodically on Saturdays and Sundays, and that's Happy Duo Cafe. Well, this Sunday, the 25th, from 2 to 3 o'clock, there will be a piano recital performance at the Happy Duo Cafe in the Village. It's free to the public. The owner just asked that you possibly purchase a beverage or a snack, and leave a tip for the performers. But this is going to be a special performance in that his 9-year-old son is going to be performing. And this Enzo is a piano virtuoso. He has performed twice in Carnegie Hall, the first time at the age of 6. And he's a wonderful performer, so I would highly suggest that the public come out and support a local business as well as a local musician, and come and listen to some good music and have a great time. So periodically through the fall and winter, Happy Duo will be posting notices on their business for these performances, and he's always invited some really good local talent to play at his cafe. So just wanted to mention that. And finally, I just wanted to remind council that I will not be here the month of October during the budget discussion, but I will, however, be looking at your lovely faces via the internet as I look at our city council meeting, so that I am prepared when I come back on November 7th to get engaged in the budget discussion. And this is also a way to kind of let the community know if you're not able to attend council meetings, they are always posted virtually, and you can find those meeting notices on our website and keep yourself engaged. So thank you.
Thank you. For the final remarks, I do have a list of things, and apologize for running late. So that reminds me, City Manager Sugg, if you would please make notes so in our agenda meetings with the mayor that we have an appropriate time of at least 20 minutes for council comments instead of 10. It's just too short, and it's more appropriate to have 20 minutes, if not longer. Thank you. The other one would be, please also note for our agenda meeting to have Sheriff Troyer lined up for October, hopefully the first meeting, if definitely the second meeting, and probably for a half an hour instead of the normal 10 minutes to leave for, it'll be a very robust conversation there with him. And so if you can make sure that that comes up in our agenda meeting. Thank you. With that, Council, on Sunday, September the 11th, I spoke on behalf of Mayor Worthington at the 9/11 Memorial at West Pierce and Rescue Station, and it was well attended by our community, and that included the 16 Combat Aviation Brigade Commander, Colonel Smith, was present and presented. And it was nice to see State Representative Mari Levitt as well as Councilmember McCluskey present as and our City Manager Steve Sugg from Gig Harbor being there. Really appreciated that. The second part here is, along with Councilmember McCluskey, we attended the Pierce County Regional Council on Thursday, September the 15th. And there's three highlights I'd like to point out. The first one is, take out my glasses there. The technical committee to the council brought forth to the board to approve the contingency list final project selections. They brought them forward because there were some extra monies that were given to us, meaning the Pierce County Council, to pick projects off our contingency list. The TCC, we'll call it, made the recommendation and brought it forth, made a recommendation to the council. There was a lot of discussion, which I would not go into. By the way, just real quick, University Place was on that recommended list of about 3 projects. Ours was about for a 40th Street project for about $700,000. But that being said, it was quite robust, is a mild word to put it. But after all being said, the biggest part was about the TCC actually had an alternate list approval. They had a list that they recommended, but they had another list in case the board decided that's not the list they wanted. They wanted to be prepared. So the list that there was an alternate would have been the list that would have been strictly on criteria and rating of points. The list that they brought forward was some of that plus being somewhat geographically fair and equity, and that's the one they chose. Because of that, there was a lot of debate. One of the council members for Sumner made a motion to vote on the alternate list, and that brought literally like an hour of debate. Finally, it was 10-10 vote with 3 abstaining. And of course, because of that 10-10, the motion failed and the recommended list went forward. Thank God, because PSRC had already left the station with having this list and the TCC approval already before public review on September the 8th. They already went out. And a matter of fact, this Thursday, on my Puget Sound Regional Council meeting, will be approving the list as well. So I'm glad that it didn't go sideways with that. Another item on that...
Question. I'm sorry. I was a little confused. So the list that got approved, were we on that list for the 700,000? Okay.
Yes, we were. Thank you. The second item for that night is a motion was made to, Deputy Mayor Whitting made a lengthy motion. Now, when I say lengthy, it was like long, a chapter. He actually had two motions, but one was required to put on hold until he got through the first one. And so he did make it through the first motion, and there was no seconds. However, there was someone that made a motion to amend his motion, and this whole motion was about, and excuse me, counsel, because it's not the easiest thing to describe, but the motion was to, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but it was basically to go through the operations of and the makeup, the bylaws of the Pierce County Regional Council Board, how they operate, period. And then the second part of that was to also review, recommend changes to the TCC criteria and categories. So that was about an hour and a half of discussion. And so with that, long story short, we ended up with the board completely declined to entertain any changes or any work group to come back with any recommendations to change the operations of the PCRC. However, they did approve to start a work group that will look at the criteria, the TCC processes for criteria and distribution of funds. And the chair Pinner, then asked for volunteers. And so the volunteers, in my mind, was somewhat lopsided on this. So unfortunately, I volunteered. So maybe unfortunately for me, but fortunately for our city and I think the council at the end of the day, because I think I represent the other side in a balance to what could go on and be brought forth to the PCRC. That was a major move because it could impact us dramatically. And that's it. So with that, I appreciate your patience with this council comments, and we'll move on with our, we'll end our our meeting, and now we'll recess into study session. And at this time, the council will have the opportunity to study and discuss business issues with staff prior to its consideration. Citizen comment is not taken at this time. However, citizens will have the opportunity to comment on the following items at future council meetings. And with that, we'll start with item number 10, Stormwater Management Action Plan. It is the second study. And we'll start with Jack Eklund. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I'm going to bring up a quick screen here just to kind of summarize what we have previously. Oh, son of a gun. Hold on a sec. Sorry. Lost the thing to control it. So you're stuck on one deal if I don't change that. Okay, so tonight I'm bringing forward for the second study, the city's stormwater management action plan. We are required under our NPDS permit to develop a stormwater management action plan, which is also referred to as a SMAP. The city, we've hired the engineering consultant firm Brian Osborne to help us assist us with this effort. And to just quickly summarize what was discussed in our previous study session, the purpose of the SMAP is to delineate our watersheds, review water quality data, prioritize the watershed, and then pick a sub-basin of that area to focus on ultimately implementing and creating new water quality improvements that would be implemented in the next NPDS permit cycle that would start in August of 2024 as the next permit cycle begins. So we have completed the prioritization work and identified the Leech Creek subbasin to focus our water quality efforts on. And this was the slide we ended on last time. I talked about this shows the area in green is the subbasin area at Leech Creek. To orient yourself, shoot, and you can't see a cursor on this, I don't believe, but the street, there's like the curvy street through there, that cirque kind of running through the middle. The big blue lines coming through there are the one on the lower part is Leech Creek. And then some of the little light blue areas are the existing storm ponds. So at the last study session, City Council requested we bring back more details on potential water quality projects, including the benefit area for them, time frame for improvement, approximate cost, as well as expanded description of the proposed projects. So in your council packet, there is a table that gives some more of these details for each of the projects. Ultimately, the projects they're looking on are, the first thing they're kind of looking at is retrofitting the existing ponds. And so the ponds we're looking at are the areas that are kind of circled there now and shaded in the red and the white. There's 3 storm ponds right around Cirque Park, or not Cirque Park, Cirque Drive. Right, Cirque Park on my mind there today. Right, Cirque Drive on either side of Alameda Avenue. These ponds were selected because the city controls a lot of the property around it, and also it has a large benefit area. I have shaded in on this map the approximate area of the water quality benefits of doing some projects in these ponds, and that's that slightly darker area that shows the area that directly drains to these ponds. There's other benefits going there, but a lot of the other areas that go directly to the creek itself. But that shows it's a large area. Part of it goes all the way even out to Bridgeport. But these areas, that's why they've identified these ponds specifically as a potential water quality benefit. Benefits we could add some filtration vaults in these areas. We could also expand the ponds themselves, create some additional area for sediment storage. But all of them is focused on water quality benefits themselves. We asked if they could give us some additional details on like approximate costs. And at this point, they wouldn't be able to provide that yet because we don't have, they'd want to have some more detailed survey out there. So a survey of these ponds would probably cost in about the $9,000 level to get some better topographic survey of these areas. And once we have that, we could better define the type of projects. Now, this definition of projects would be part of the incorporated into our current stormwater comp plan effort. And then any capital costs associated with those would be calculated in our when we look at our fee calculation for our project needs. Another thing we've looked at in the area is the potential source tracing study for Leech Creek. We have 2 elements, 2 water quality issues in Leech Creek that are identified above or below what we'd want to see. But what we have is higher than, we have high levels of fecal chloroform as well as some high levels of mercury. And so what the source tracing study would be for fecal chloroform, what they would look at is they've done this before in other watersheds too, is I guess they're anticipating each of these studies would be about $5,000. You would, once again, that would be built into the comp plan capital needs list as well. But for fecal chloroform, you would take samples. You would then identify the reaches of the creek where we would see the higher levels. And then they would sounded almost felt a little bit like CSI-like, but we'd be doing DNA tests of the samples. But in this case, to determine is it a human waste issue or an animal waste issue. And then that would help then target, where our problems. So is it an issue of basically failing septic systems, or is it an issue of, I guess in our case, we do have a cow field upstream, which seems funny these days, but we do. So that would be the focus of the study. There wouldn't be, in this permit cycle, it would be basically the study would be would start, but the actual action or implementation really wouldn't be, it would just be more an evaluation in this study period. Whereas the pond projects would be retrofitted in this upcoming permit cycle. The other thing they talked about, so for mercury, you would do a similar deal except for no DNA, but basically divide the creek into segments. Do your samples to find out where the highest concentration is, and then focus on signs in the area to figure out what's the cause of that. So those are the two source tracking studies. The other items they talked about were a public education campaign, which would include printed materials, website materials, as well as some additional public education signage, probably in the $2,000 range is what they're anticipating for something there. And then they had a maintenance emphasis in this area for both cleaning of our streets and catch basins. Now, we already do pretty comprehensive job of cleaning all of our catch basins in the city. We typically get 80% of our catch basins cleaned on an annual basis. Our requirement is, I think, 50% a year or 60, but we exceed that. But what we'd be focusing on in this basin itself, we'd make sure 100% of the basins and of the catch basins in this area were cleaned yearly to make sure that we're also having the biggest impact for the sub basin. And then I think that generally is the gist of what the additional work they're looking at doing. At this time, it's still preliminary and getting the information of what they need to do. We will be able to come back with more detail on these specific projects as they develop them in the comprehensive plan. So the next step and touch back with council would be essentially the capital list, the proposed capital list when we're looking at the comprehensive plan update. So with that, that concludes my report, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, excuse me. Well, I'll get there. I did. Oh, that's wood. Well, we'll come back to you. Oh, you're on.
I'm on.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Jack, thanks for the great report. I got two quick questions, and I think you may have answered the latter question that I have. At the head of Leech Creek, as you pointed out, that entire region prior to that housing development that went in was all cow fields up in that area. So at the head of that creek, that part of it is still there. So it wouldn't surprise me that your contamination source is coming from that area. So here's the question. Once you identify that, what's your steps for mitigating it? I mean, where do you go from there? That's my first question.
Yeah, and I think when I asked a similar question to the engineers, and what they said is, your first step is identifying, is it human or animal? If you identify animal, then there are some mitigation measures you could have along the areas where potentially runoff is getting in from those properties to try to do some capture that and treatment in those areas. But you'd obviously need to work with the property owner to be able to do some of those things. But classifying the problem is the first step, I guess.
Start thinking about how do you clean it up? You're talking about purification at the head up there. That's going to be horrendously expensive. So I'm just curious on that one.
I think it would be just source control, though. It wouldn't be any cleaning new stuff. It would just be as runoff comes off, trying to capture it before it gets into the creek would be the concept.
Right, but I'm Just saying that runoff, it's a kind of a valley up there at the head. So you got runoff for at least 3/4 of a mile on either side. So trying to capture that's going to be a super challenge to do that, and expensive. So the second piece, I noticed you didn't mention the catch basin down there, just adjacent to Leech Creek and Bridgeport Way as the creek crosses Bridgeport Way. We got a catch basin down there. I noticed we had some bulldozers and crew down there the other day. Is that part of the clean out of that particular basin, or are we planning something else with this particular plan?
So that's unrelated to this. I wonder if I can go back and kind of see the area that you're looking at. It's down at the lower corner, the little blue pond down there. That's an issue where there was a slope failure on the pond, on that pond. That's actually a private pond that's operated and maintained by a homeowner association. However, due to the there's this main sewer line that serves the entire county that runs through the side slope of that, or along the side slope of that pond. So the city's actually, we're using our emergency powers to go in there. The homeowners association was not they've accepted responsibility, but they haven't been in a position to be able to act on it. And so we're using our emergency powers to go in there, stabilize it, and get that so it we won't have a problem with that sewer line. So that's unrelated, but it is in the same area.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, my question relates to what Councilmember Fleming just brought up, but kind of on a broader scale, which is, though that was the generation of this question, I'm pretty sure it's beyond the scope of the SMAP, the action plan, but does stormwater management in general of the city, does it address privately held detention ponds? And if so, is there a way we can get a better understanding of the role and impact of private versus public retention ponds in the city, like how much each one does, what role they have, how we manage that process? And you don't have to go into detail now since it's really beyond the scope of this action plan. That's just something I would like to get a better understanding of in the future.
Sure. Just in general, our NPDES permit does require management of both, although from the private side, it only covers things from 2007 and more recent. So prior to 2007, it's not mandated by NPDES at least, but it is, the private side is a little trickier to control though, for sure. But we can certainly, I can get back to you on more information on that for sure.
And Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. I would also like to echo Councilmember Wood's curiosity on how many how many private retention ponds do we have in the city, and how are they managed? What's the city's role in any of these private retention ponds? And also echoing what Councilmember Wood would like to address. I would like to understand that more as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get you some of that information.
My last question here is are we going to do any educational outreach classes like we had done in the past?
Yeah, we'll continue to do those classes. The natural yard care continues to be exciting, classes. People really like them and popular. And so we'll continue to continue to keep doing those. And the ones that don't, some of them, they now get enough bigger name speakers that they have their own copyright. So for those folks, we can't repost the videos, but for the other ones, we're able to keep them on our website. So that's available for folks that aren't able to do it. But then we may also, because of the popularity and I think ease of access for these virtual classes, I think that will be a good venue for any education on this basin itself as well. So I think that will be in the works as well.
All right, great. And once you get the topics and the times, could you email me those dates and times? And
yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Mr. Kill, if you push your speak button, I'll put.
I gotta, can
Yeah,
I use,
okay.
can I use this mic?
Oh, no, I want to get you in. I want to see if it works.
Okay.
Okay.
It works. Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jack, thanks for your presentation. My question has a lot to do with where Councilmember Fleming was going with his questions around the cleanup. And I guess my summarization is that regardless of human or animal waste, I'm presuming it's going to have to be cleaned. And that presumption is that it is going to be a cost to us. And I'm curious to know or understand if you've thought about that. Is there any kind of projections? And is there any plans to work that into our budget? And what would that impact be? And what years would it happen? And have you worked with our financial folks to just work all that in?
Sure. And then, so the study itself would occur in like 2025, 26 would be the time frame for the study to find out where things are. The assumption would be then likely we would be required to take action on that study the following permit term. So each permit is 5 years long. And so if this one starts at 24, so 29 is probably when we would be looking at a project for doing something. So we'd have, there's still quite a bit of time to, once we quantify and isolate where the problem is, developing that kind of the budgets and solutions. So it's down the road a bit. So we haven't really factored that in, but the cost of that would have likely we would need to look at recalculating, potentially swim fees and adjustments at that point, based on our program costs.
Yeah, great, thank you for that. And so, Mayor Pro Tem, I would just suggest, and maybe I'll kind of carry this with you and the mayor to work with city manager to begin the pre-planning for all that. I mean, we're tight already, and we're focused on what we're looking at now, something that we know is going to come in 2029. I think it'd just be smart to start planning and trying to work that in 2023 so that we're ready in 2029. Thank you, Jack.
Yep.
Any other council members? Well, with a final note, good point, Councilmember Kill. And with that, Jack, and during the council meeting, I know that, Mayor Pro Tem's agenda meetings, I know that you participate. So would you please make a note to bring that up so that we can just have a chat, discussion around that, especially I'm in the same track with Councilmember Kill, and that is, but on my part, it would be the funding. What kind of funding is required, money's out of our pocket versus the swim funds and grants or whatever, okay? So we can get a good picture. With that, my question would be more of a question is, when do you need to have council for us to have a vote on this for your action plan? When is that? Is there a requirement?
So I believe our next step, where we'd have whether it be a vote, probably the next step we'd have an actual vote with an action would be when we adopt the capital project list associated with the stormwater comprehensive plan. And so that'd be the next time. I think that'll be our next step.
But that's not for a while, right?
I think that we're in the process of going for it. I would assume we'd come back to council. I think we're on track to do it later in the either late or early spring, probably. I think is what our time frame for that is.
And the reason I'm asking this, council members, is because unless you have you need other information and follow up, we wouldn't hear it from them again until it comes before our vote, which may be a while. So what I would like to suggest is maybe let's ask, let's, in agenda meetings, figure out when in between now and closer to when you're going to be bringing it forth for a vote, to have a refresher course slash study to refresh us what we just did, and maybe answer some of the questions that you just heard today, and that way we'll be ready to vote for it without much, hopefully, discussion. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Yes, you may, and here we go. Okay, I'll get there. I am stubborn. Oh, okay.
All right, we're going
City
to go
clerk, we're
Plan
going to
B.
straighten this out.
So, Jack, just really fast, along the lines of all the conversations taking place regarding this cleanup coming to us in the future, in the cobwebs of my mind, the MPDES, is there not in that program cleanup funds available when identified?
Potentially. They do have, they do offer some grants on a somewhat regular basis, but it's based on competitive funds, and so there is a potential certainly for that. And I think that by developing doing the study and document, it helps put us in position for those.
Recommend for what it's worth, maybe we look in terms of that strategic planning down the road, start kind of priming that pump, because I know there's funding there. And like you said, it is competitive, and if we're the squeaky wheel, we'll rise up in that category. So thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Good idea.
We certainly have our work ahead of us. So with that, we're concluding the study session. And now we're going into our executive session, closed session. And before I do this, legal counsel, can we have a 2-minute break before we go into study session?
You can have a 2-minute break if a majority of the council wants a 2-minute break.
Once we do this, council members, no, we're going to go in the conference room, but we will have a 10-minute break before we start our study session. And at this time of the agenda,
The exec session.
Excuse me, executive session. At this time of the agenda, the city council will recess to executive session for approximately 1.5 hours per RCW 42.30.110(1)I to discuss potential litigation with legal counsel, and per RCW 42.30.144B to review proposals and adopt strategy to be taken by the city during the course of collective bargaining. Any action of these issues will only be taken during council open session. Thank you.
And just before we recess into exec session, it should be noted that following the conclusion of the exec and sessions, council is set to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
you.